Hey there, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And I have a little bit of an unexpected guest on the channel today, but I'm really excited, so I hope you enjoy this conversation. So today I'm sharing my conversation with Jody Dyer, who is an author, ghostwriter, and writing coach, and who owns Crippled Beagle Publishing. And you might be thinking, what does book writing or publishing have to do with owning an indoor playground? Well, I'm glad you asked because about a year ago on this channel, I interviewed Molly Pittman, who is the owner of Sweet Charlotte's Indoor Playground and Preschool. And I'm going to link to that interview with Molly in the video description just so you can get an idea in case you missed it. But in that conversation, Molly shared her book with us called Love Without Words. And I've gotten so many questions since I published that interview about how Molly got into book writing and how she's incorporated it with her indoor playground business. And what I haven't been able to stop thinking about Molly and her book, I mean, first of all, it's become an absolute staple in our house. We absolutely love it. I bought 3 copies for everyone I know, and every single person who invites me to a baby shower is going to get her book in the near future. However, what I can't stop thinking about is that writing this book has allowed Molly to expand the impact and benefit of her indoor playground far beyond her 4 walls. Because one of the downsides about owning a physical brick and mortar business is that we can only serve so many people, right? For example, I mean, somebody can't drive their child from Texas to New York to go to Molly's preschool, right? And I know that she's on a wait list right now, so she can't even serve all the people that she wants to in her own community because there's always going to be that capacity limit. So what I love about her book is that she's able to spread her mission far and wide because Molly opened her business with a purpose. And now that purpose is able to reach so many more people and really just cement her legacy. And I'm so excited for this conversation because from everybody that I've worked with in the indoor playground industry, I'm lucky enough to have worked with thousands and thousands of people by this point. Every single person that comes into this industry has a story. They have a purpose or they have some drive that's motivating them to do this because trust me, it's never just about the money. So what I love about writing a book is, again, it helps you expand your impact and reach more people with your message, whatever that message may be. So in this conversation, we are going to talk about the process of writing a children's book. We're going to talk about some common mistakes that people make. We're going to talk about some pros and cons of different types of publishing. We're going to talk about marketing your book, integrating it with your other services, and all of that. So I have linked Jody's information in the video description if you want to connect with her or learn more. She is just so generous with her free resources and her knowledge. So again, I'm so grateful to have her here today. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Jody Dyer, the owner of Crippled Beagle Publishing. Hi, Jody. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
I'm very excited. This is a topic that we've never covered before, so I'm really excited to get into this conversation. But before we dive in, do you want to take a quick moment to introduce yourself?
Of course, yes. So thank you for having me. My name is Jody Dyer. I'm a writer, ghostwriter, editor, publisher, and book marketing coach, and I work with primarily first-time authors and then lots of people who want to rewrite books or republish old books or write new books. And then also I work with entrepreneurs who want to tell their stories in order to attract their audiences, attract their ideal clients, or just share their wisdom or the blessings they've enjoyed as business owners.
And what inspired you to get into this? Because it's such an interesting line of work.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we end up doing things that have nothing to do with what we studied in school, but then it comes full circle and it all matters, right? You cannot be too well educated. So I majored in finance because I thought I wanted to be a businesswoman. Turns out I am, but I actually have always written books or written for a hobby and wrote my first book in 2013. So I went through, and some of your audience members may identify with some of the struggles that I've been through. I went through 6 years of fertility treatments to no avail, and then 2 years of the domestic infant adoption process. And that was a whole nother set of hurdles and honestly trauma and stress and hardship, and then also incredible miracles. But those 8 years, I never could find resources that really helped me because some of that pain is quite private. So books would have been a great answer, and I couldn't find the book I needed. So after I had success, and when my son was about 3 years old, I decided to write the book that I had needed at the time. And it has helped thousands of women and families, especially those who've dealt with infertility or are part of the adoption triad, meaning the child, the birth mother, birth father, or the adoptive parents. So it's been a wonderful experience. And then when I lost my corporate job, which felt like a bad thing at the time, but turned out to be one of the best moments of my life, looking back, I decided, and my friends encouraged me to just start my own business. So I started writing for a living. And that's kind of my zone of genius or my natural unique ability. And so I just decided to go all in on that. And then what happened was I was ghostwriting for other writers or authors or business people or whatnot. And they needed a publishing answer because traditional publishing is exceedingly difficult to pursue. And so I created a publishing imprint to help them. So now I'm a ghostwriter, writer, editor, hybrid publisher, and book marketing coach.
Awesome. And we're going to get into kind of the publishing options and things like that when we get into it. But actually, how I came across your content is you were talking about creating children's books and writing children's books. And that really intrigued me because I would say actually about a year ago now, I visited an indoor playground, and she had gotten into the business of owning an indoor playground because she had similar experiences that she went through, and her son has a disability, and she wrote a book to kind of help other families cope. So it has a lot of parallels to your story. And ever since then, I've noticed that people who own indoor playgrounds, they entered the industry for similar reasons, right? Not always because their child has a disability, but some purpose or some passion brought them to the industry, and they want to share that, whether it's through a memoir or more specifically a children's book. That's what has really, I think, engaged my audience. So can you talk a little bit about the experience you have in that space as well?
I looked to see in my records how many, I've got notes here. So I think I've worked on, oh my gosh, I know I've helped almost 400 people with writing projects of some scope. Most of those are books. And I would say, looks like I've done well over 30 children's books. And so that's a pretty good chunk of that if you think about it, because there are lots of genres and lots of types of books. So yeah, I've worked with over 30. And the first client I had was a grandmother with 6 grandchildren, and she wanted to write about her travels that did not include them, but she was like, this is kind of a legacy project, right? And she'd been all these cool places and just wanted them to know about it. And there are a lot of them. So she decided to write one book for each of these amazing trips, like Africa, the Holy Land, and some like in our hometown, the lake, like things that they've actually experienced. So it was really cool. And then I guess word just spread, or people saw that on my website and social media. And so all these grandparents started coming to me, right? And so it's really fun to help them do these legacy type projects, but it makes total sense for somebody who has a playground to write books, because the books can promote the playground, but also serve the existing clients there. Not everybody wants to slide and swing all day, right? They can sit down, read.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also helps them serve a community that is well outside the scope of what their indoor playground can provide. Like, for example, the woman who I toured with, Molly Pittman, she, opened the indoor playground in Buffalo, New York, but obviously she can only serve a certain geographic area. She has a building capacity, so she's now able to, improve the lives of families of kids with disabilities all over the country and world, way beyond Buffalo, New York. So I love that it's been able to help her expand her impact. And I just love the way books can do that for so many things.
That's wonderful. That reminds me of my client, Charlie Higdon. So Charlie has achondroplasia. So he is a dwarf, and he writes Little People Adventures. We've done 3 books. One's about a common surgery for children with that condition. And then one is about how he is mistaken for a Christmas elf. He's really funny. It's great. And then the other one is about, it's called Being Tall. Let's see, Living Tall While Being Small. Something like that. I've worked on a lot of books. So his are really cute, and they minister to those families who are dealing with achondroplasia, but also they teach a lot of empathy and understanding and big thinking to youngsters. So like his church has the book in their library, the elementary schools here do. So that's been a really good experience for him. And absolutely, books expand your reach.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some things that make writing children's books unique from maybe other types of books or projects that you've worked on?
Well, ironically, even though they're shorter, they can be more difficult because you have to get the point across succinctly, right? So also they require obviously illustration, because the younger the child, well, the age difference matters. Okay. So younger children like bigger, blockier, bold, black and white or primary colors. And then the older the child gets, the more complex the images can be that appeal to them. And then also vocabulary, you have to be really careful with. You want to stretch their thinking and have the parent have to stop or the reader stop and explain a word, but you don't want to do it to where they don't understand anything, right? And then there are all these interactive pieces that you can add, like look for the thing and find it under the thing, so all that. So there's a lot to think about. It doesn't have to be complicated though. Sometimes I'll have authors who just keep it really simple, and we just have the image on. We always put the image on the right side of the spread if we have an image on one side and text on the other, because typically the child is sitting beside an adult. And this is for children who can't read, obviously, but even those who can read a little, they still want to be read to. So the adult's holding the book, the child's on the right. So we put the picture here so the child can look at the words, but is focused on the picture and listening. So there are just a lot of little things to think about as the editor and publisher that are different than, say, with fiction, romance, or sci-fi novel.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to the illustrations in a minute because
Okay.
I want to dive deeper on that, because that point actually really intrigued me.
Yeah.
But just to kind of take a step back, what are the general steps that someone would need to go through if they have an idea for a book, but they're not sure where to get started?
Absolutely. So then I coach writers through this process, no matter what the book's about or what their goals are. Okay. Whether it's an entrepreneur, somebody who's an entrepreneur who wants to write a children's book, a memoir, fiction, whatever. So the first thing you do is decide why you're doing it, because you got to stay motivated. It's not easy work. It can take longer than you might like or might think. So figure out why you're doing it and remind yourself every time, you're like, oh my gosh, when's this going to be finished? Or why am I rewriting this again? Okay. Remember why you're doing it. So stay motivated. Number 2 is define who your audience is. So I have a little exercise called Who's the Boss of Your Book? And knowing that ideal client or ideal reader, just like you would for your business, helps you fine tune the writing, it helps you make every decision. Okay. But here's the good thing. It does not alienate other readers. So J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter series, she writes for 11-year-old boys. Lots of people read her books, way more than just 11-year-old boys. But when you know who your audience is, and you can even name a single person and just really think about that person. Like, I'm writing this for Michelle, right? It just helps you make every decision. And that applies to marketing as well. So once you know who that ideal target reader is, then you can make all kinds of decisions a lot faster. With children's books, the ideal reader and the purchaser are often a different person. So there's a lot to think about there. The third step would be just to brainstorm. And I like to do that with sticky notes or note cards, like everything I want the child to learn, who the characters can be, the setting, all of these story elements like plot, theme, tone, mood, voice, style, all those things. Just dump it out on index cards or sticky notes or in a Google Doc or whatever. And then a lot of times a pattern will emerge, and then it just helps you think. So just taking action helps you think about what you really want to say, because the story can take a completely different turn. And that's okay. you just don't know that until you start writing. Then we rough draft, then revise. And then what I like to do is kind of chunk it up and think what images come to mind and what pieces of text or what blocks of text go with what images. So my client Tony just sent me hers, like these sentences need a picture of this. Next page, page 3, we need this type of image. And the image can spread across the book. Like when you open a book, it can go all the way across, or it can be on one side or the other. That just depends on the style and you know how much you budget and who's doing the illustrations and all that. And
Yes.
then after that, you decide how you want to publish and then market. Marketing can start day one, but a lot of my clients choose to do that last because they want to finish the book and then promote it.
That's awesome. And when it comes to the illustrations, do you help connect people with illustrators, or is that something that they do on their own? How does that process work?
It's a mix. So a lot of times people will, because they don't understand the industry, because most of my clients are first-time authors, they a lot of times will have somebody illustrate for them, and then we collaborate with the illustrator they've already hired. Sometimes we'll help them, we'll find one, and have some on my team, and we match them based on the style they want. So if somebody says, I want it to look like Care Bears, right, versus Diary of a Wimpy Kid versus a cartoon, right? So you can have, pen and ink, you can have watercolor, you can have all kinds of different images. You can also use photos. And sometimes clients will come to me and say, I just want pictures that I've taken. It just depends. It's a lot. Like if you're writing a book about nature, we don't really have to have somebody necessarily draw. We can grab pictures from our resources online. But then also there's AI, which just blows my mind. I have a colleague named Jolene who does AI art, artificial intelligence art. And it's insane what she can create from the author's ideas. Beautiful stuff. And she can match it. So I can say, make this, draw an old car with 2 children in the back seat eating popcorn and make it Norman Rockwell style. And she can do it, and it's fantastic, and it's fast, and it's all original because she's manipulating it. That's her canvas, if you will. So the thing with illustrations is it can be really expensive and it can be really inexpensive. I've worked with students who don't charge anything, who need the work for portfolios. Sometimes an artist will be friends with the author and they collaborate and they just split the cost, split the royalties, whatever. There are all kinds of ways to work that out. And I actually have a tool called How to Work with Illustrators that I can send to your audience. If they just message me, I'll send it to them. So I'm happy to do that. I have some other things like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like that's a big benefit of working with somebody like yourself, is having somebody to pair you up with those connections, and especially keeping up with the trends in the industry. Because like you said, for a first-time author, not only do we come into this industry not knowing the landscape, but we don't know what's new. We don't know what's, outdated. So that's a really good point I think you brought up.
Yes. That's what I really like, to meet clients wherever they are. Okay, so I assess where they are. We talk about their goals, who they're trying to serve, right? What their interests and schedules look like. And then I meet them where they are on that pathway, and we help them any number of ways that make sense for them to get them where they want to go. And so it's really nice to have somebody educate you on the process as you go along. There are a lot of publishing entities that take advantage of first-time authors, and they have packages. They'll call them like the bestseller package. Nobody can guarantee results other than I can guarantee that the result will be you'll have a beautifully crafted book, but I can't guarantee sales. So I caution people to really watch for those types of promises and talk to somebody in the industry who's credible before you make a big investment. But yeah, I especially like, because I was a teacher for a while, so I really enjoy educating my clients on the process and helping them make decisions that are best for them and their readers.
I love that. And I assume that, again, because a lot of people probably don't know a lot of experienced people in the industry, they try to go it themselves, and they probably, overcome or need to overcome some obstacles or make some mistakes. So can you talk about the common mistakes that you see when people do try to go through this process alone without a coach or without an industry expert to guide them?
Right. So a lot of times people think they're going to spend less money if they do it themselves. And that's not necessarily true, because you might do things multiple times and then end up saying, forget it. I just need somebody to handle it. Right. And energy is an expense and time is an expense. And so you want this creative pursuit to be a beautiful experience, not a stressful one. And it can be absolutely wonderful, even if we point out. So I might meet with somebody who says, I've got a book idea, but I've never written a word. Like my client, Joanne, she had this great concept. She had these old drawings that she did when she was about 5 or 6 years old. She said, I want a story around these, but I'm a retired professional. Like, I don't know if she was in banking or something like that. She's like, forget it. I don't have time. And so I said, I'll write the story. So we worked together. She had a lot of input, and she was the kind of like the substantive editor, but I ghost wrote the story. And then there are people who say, no, I love writing. I'm like, go for it. So they write it. Then they come back and we talk about editing, which editing is not expensive with a children's book because we charge by the word typically, and it's short. So that's kind of a non-issue. And then with publishing, you have different options. So the mistake I see among first-time authors especially is they jump on the best website that promises the bestseller package, and they pay for something and they assume they're being traditionally published, and they're not. And they assume that the publisher is going to publicize or market the book for them, and most do not. And they also pay for a big process, but then they end up doing a lot of the work themselves. So that's I would caution them there. So really being educated about the process and what's involved can really help. And that's why I do the next steps calls with people. They're no cost, because I really want to help them make good decisions and not have them fall prey to some of these companies who take advantage of first-time authors, because it's a big industry. There are a lot of people who have book ideas, and only about 3% of them ever write the book. Wow. So one of my goals is to help more people write their books and actually fulfill that dream.
I love that. And, can you talk a little bit or elaborate on what you were referring to when it comes to traditional publishing versus other methods of publishing and what that means? Because as somebody who's never written a book, that just went right over my head. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Okay. So what we are used to, or what we kind of historically know about publishing, is what we see in movies, right? Or on TV, or reading books about getting a publishing deal. So the old way, which is still in existence, is traditional publishing. Okay. That means that you solicit an agent. You have to write a lot of what are called query letters, Query. You write a lot of those to find the right agent. Then an agent represents you. I mean, you can write 1,000 and you can get rejected 1,000 times. And it can take a long time, because publishers have big buildings, big expenses, big payroll, and they have to gamble on books they know will sell. So traditional publishers, so they tend to err on the side of retail success versus ideas. Okay, so you might have a brilliant idea and something really compelling that traditional publishers are like, you don't have any following, you don't have an email list, you don't have social media presence. This is just about, if you're unknown, it's a really, really long shot. Okay. But with traditional publishing, if you do get a deal, they give you an advance, meaning a check, and often they buy the rights, not always. And then it can take a year, 2 years, 3 years. They can decide not to publish it all, depending on what they predict as the retail success. And then you get a sliver of the royalties, the earnings for sales from that point forward. Okay. And then you work out those deals with them. But like I said, if you're not already famous or don't have a comment in your following, it's really hard to secure those deals. On the other end of the spectrum is self-publishing, where you do it all yourself. You could type up a book and staple it together and say, this is published, and start giving it to people, selling it to people, right? So it goes all the way over there. But you can also use print on demand companies like Kindle Direct Publishing and Ingram Spark to do that for you and list the books on sale with distribution networks. Okay. Then self-publishing is a great tool. I love it. And I encourage as many people as possible to use that. In the middle is hybrid publishing. And that's what I do. And there are a lot of us now, because we are an answer to a big problem, which is somebody doesn't want to, or knows they're not going to get picked up by a big publisher, but also doesn't want the learning curve that comes with self-publishing, because it can be technically a lot. And they also don't understand the industry. They don't understand standards, right? So they work with a hybrid publisher who can walk with them down the entire path. And we customize the pricing based on the person's needs. Most of us have packages because that's just easier for the author, but we can tweak those packages to match, like I said, budget, schedule, interests, all that, audience, content, and everything. So hybrid publishing is a wonderful way to meet your goal without overspending and without losing your mind. So it's the headache, the least headache way to go, I would say.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
and with a hybrid publisher, you pay them, right? You pay them for services. But when it comes to royalties, you get almost all the royalties. So it's flipped. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like from traditional publishing, you get most of the money up front, and then you can't expect, a lot from the recurring sales.
Right. And the main thing to understand about traditional publishing is there are very few of them, and they want to take gambles on people who are famous, who they know will have retail success.
Right.
They know, it takes, and then on the self-publishing side, you can publish all day long. I actually teach people how to do that so that they can. So I have, if I have somebody who has zero budget, but has great ideas, I'm like, then we figure out a way, and I teach them to self-publish, and they just go to town. It's great.
I'm picturing, when I picture traditional publishing, I always picture Walter from the movie Elf at
Yes.
his big conference table, and stamping yes or no and things like that. So yeah, that does seem very intimidating.
Yes, that's how big they are, and that's the difference. My clients really enjoy working with somebody they can call on the phone, like old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like one of the benefits of having, a hybrid publisher or somebody to kind of walk along that path with you is, again, making sure that all of your mistakes are being prevented and things like that. But it does sound like it puts a little bit more on our shoulders, or I'm saying I'm not an author, but for the people listening, it puts a little bit more on our shoulders when it comes to the marketing aspect. So can you talk a little bit about the marketing portion? Because I think that's something that a lot of people underestimate. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
But
you're
can you
right.
talk a little bit about, if you're not going the traditional publishing route, what are some things you can expect to have to do when it comes to marketing your book in order to make it successful? Because I know, I've seen a lot of book launches and things like that, and it seems like it's a lot of work, and it's kind of a sprint to the launch, and how well that launch goes has a lot to do with long-term success. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I've always been interested in that process.
Absolutely. So no matter how you publish, the author is primarily responsible for promoting the book, because retailers and readers want to engage with the author, not the publisher. And think about it this way. When you finish reading a great book and you're like, gosh, that was amazing, and then you want to get nosy, you don't go back to see who published it. You read the about the author page. Like, I wonder where she lives. I wonder what she does for fun, So I wonder what her other books are. You don't think, I wonder what Penguin Random House is up to today. So the author also manages the author's schedule. And so it's just more efficient for the author to market his or her work. So usually hybrid publishers and traditional publishers will have packages for marketing. What I do is to help you get started. So I have tiers. I have a course called Market Your Book. And we have some packages to help people get a media kit started, just to give them a little training and a little momentum to get them going. But you can also hire a publicist. That is someone who specializes in getting you into media outlets. But the beauty of books to me is that they live forever. There is no rush. So when you see somebody, like you said, Michelle, sprinting for the launch, what that person's trying to do is get a lot of books sold, a lot of copies sold in a short period of time to raise their ranking in Amazon, or to try to get on a bestseller list in Amazon or New York Times or some magazine or whatever. But readers, for the most part, listen to friends and family. Like, I don't go to any list to decide what to read. I actually text my cousin Annie, like, what are you reading? Or my girlfriends will say, oh my gosh, this book is great, you've got to read it. Or my children love this book, I'm going to get it for everybody this year for birthday gifts. So most of the time it's word of mouth, which is free. And another beautiful thing about book marketing is, A, you don't have to be in a hurry unless you're trying to, beef up sales in a short period of time. And B, it can cost almost zero. It's just time, energy, effort. Okay. So I teach in my marketing course for authors 6 foundational steps. So the first is having a kit, like a go-to set of printed and digital materials, like bookmarks, postcards, things that are fun to share. Okay. Sell sheets, which are flyers front and back that they give to retailers or librarians or schools or whatnot. Okay. Then we talk about reviews, how to use reviews, how to write reviews. It's funny because a lot of authors will say, nobody's writing reviews for my book. And I ask them, how many reviews have you written this year? So you got to put that good energy out into the world. So we talk about reviews, how to use them, all kinds of things, reviews. The third is having landing pages. So you can have a website, but you don't have to. You can use Amazon Author Central. You can have a page or a landing page in Goodreads. Both of those are free. You can have a blog free. And then let's see what else, social media, which, as you know, that's a whole thing. But there are some really simple, fun ways to use social media as an author. You can make that as big or as simple as you want. The key there is to remember who's the boss of your book and go where they are already hanging out, not try to create something new, right? Just go where they already are, spend time there, engage with them there. And then the fifth one is reaching people in digital and literal landscapes. So like podcasts, how to reach out to podcasts, how to talk to bloggers, how to do guest blogs, how to get opportunities to speak, things like that in person or digitally. And then the last one is email lists, which, as you and I know, is a great way to grow an audience and grow a business and serve and nurture people. But that's usually a little too techy for some to start off with. So we did that last. So those are the 6 principal things that I teach, most of which cost the author nothing but time and energy. And what's also beautiful is that if you write, you've got an advantage in marketing, because that's all it is communicating. And you're just helping people make decisions. You're just helping people generally. You're entertaining them, nurturing them. You're not selling, right? So it's just a way to talk to your potential readers or existing readers. And marketing can be a lot of fun. And it can also help you figure out ideas for another book so the audience can serve you back. So it's a great experience, but expect to do it no matter how you publish. There are companies who, like, I have packages to help you get started, and we do ongoing services if people want them, but that's mostly related to, the social media posting and things like that. And then they're publicists. So it really depends on your budget. But if you have a budget of 0, you can market your book and be successful if it's well written and well designed.
And I love that.
Success is determined by your definition, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love that if you're building an email list, even though it, might seem a little technical, if you do write another book, it's probably, almost like a ready-made audience of people who already enjoy your writing and are much more likely to buy.
You can actually build. So I talked to a friend of mine, Jenny, yesterday, who wants to write a book. And you can actually write a book while you email. You can do all of it at the same time. It can be kind of weird, but there are ways to kind of repurpose everything you do so that you're doing something once and growing your audience. Like the hero's journey is a big trend where it's always been a thing, right? But if you start a Facebook group for people who may want to use your indoor playground, okay, and you say, I'm writing a children's book and I want your input, you can grow that audience. Like, what should I name this character? Or what should this city be? Or whatever. I mean, you can engage people all along and grow the audience, and then they'll feel like they took part in the creative process. They'll definitely buy the book. You know, so there are all kinds of, like, really think outside the box about how can I get people involved in the process as early as possible, and then keep them involved and keep them engaged. It doesn't have to be hard, and you can learn a little bit at a time.
Absolutely. And anybody listening should be very familiar with this process because it's something that I teach when it comes to launching the indoor playground is involving your community from the very beginning, getting input, making them feel that connection, that buy-in, so that by the time you open your doors, they're ready to play. They already trust you. They're more likely to book parties right away. So it's very similar. It sounds like there are so many parallels.
Yeah, so ready to play, ready to read.
Exactly. And we all do story times and things like that. So anybody with, I think, a physical brick and mortar location probably are at a huge advantage when it comes to reaching new people, getting the book out there, getting that word of mouth kind of going.
You know, it would be really cool if and you may have thought of this already because I know how creative you are, but it'd be cool to have host book signings with children's book authors in your area, because local authors are in every location, right? So if you were to say, hey, we want to do a fun book signing for local authors of children's books, but you could also have a couple of authors there for the parents, who knows? And it's good to have a group too. So then not only do more people learn about your playground, but also the parents and children learn about some new books, and they get used to seeing books in that environment and start thinking of you that way too. So that could be really fun.
Absolutely. And I was always surprised just having conversations with our customers, how many of them were authors, whether it was, a romance book or a children's book or a business book. So it's a way to continue serving your customers too, is giving, sharing your platform with them and making them feel involved. So honestly, I think it's just a win on all sides. So I'm glad we brought that up.
Yeah, sure.
So one question that I got from my audience is, for people, because I know the children's book industry can feel very saturated. It can feel like every topic has been talked about. So if somebody has a book idea, but they feel like it's been done or they feel like they won't be able to stand out, kind of going along with our marketing discussion, do you have any tips on how to stand out or create something unique for a topic that's already been talked about?
Well, think about it this way. You're unique. So just be as you as possible on paper when you're writing this book or screen. So if the topic's already out there and there are lots of books written about it, that means it's a popular topic. There's a market for it. It does not mean it. So think about it this way too, like people have their favorite genres, and children have their favorite animals, and they have their favorite items. Like I know my son was really into dinosaurs. And he was really into Davy Crockett. So whatever was related to the Alamo, I had to read. Okay. Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, the Alamo, Tennessee, Texas, all of it. I was an expert. Okay. And I was also an expert in dinosaurs, which do not interest me at all, but they interested him. So it didn't matter that there were 4 books because he wanted 5, 6, 17 more. So the trick is to just be yourself and not try to be like any other author. Don't look at another book and say, I want to sound like Dr. Seuss, because you can't, and he can't sound like you, right? So just be yourself in your writing, and that's your voice. That is one of the major story elements, is the author's voice. Okay. So that's one tip. Another one is to add value however you can. So there are some kind of cool ways you can add value. One is, let's say you have a website and you have where people can download things. You can have coloring pages of the characters in different settings. You could even add pages in the book, right? Like discussion questions. let's say you write a children's book where there's a restaurant. You could have like a blank menu and say, write in the menu, like what would you serve if you had a restaurant? Anything that engages them. And I'm a big proponent of creating books so that children and adults can write in the books for a few reasons. When it comes to marketing, if I write in a book, let's say I'm writing something personal, like it's a journal prompt book, and I don't have a separate journal, I just write the answers right there. I'm not going to give that book to somebody else. I'm going to buy another one and give it to somebody, right? So if you have a children's book and your child has written or drawn pictures in it, you're going to save it. And if the child's engaged, it's a much more rewarding experience for the child to engage with the author that way. Like those, there used to be books where you could choose your mystery or choose the outcome. But what if the child can write in it? It's just a much richer experience. And it's also old school, and it uses different parts of the brain, and it's more beneficial to the child than say going to a screen. I wouldn't send them to a screen. I would send them to a website to download and print a coloring page or a puzzle or something like that. So like you can add crossword puzzles, word finds, coloring pages in the books, like all kinds of fun things based on the content, a recipe, a map. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to add value, glossary. So let's say I have my adult clients do this sometimes because it makes sense. So one of my clients, Kevin, wrote a couple of contemporary memoirs, narrative nonfiction, and the main character is a firefighter. And he used all these terms that relate to firefighting, which was great. And the readers learn a lot. I was like, put a glossary in the back and explain, and put some stats in the back. And people love those sections. It's like, gosh, I know so much now about the EMTs and fire service. So that was kind of cool. So that's one way to set yourself apart. Otherwise, I think when it comes to marketing is instead of trying to grow an audience from scratch, figure out where your audience already is and just spend time there, hang out with them, and be as unselfish as possible. Just be generous, ask questions, cheer them on, get ideas, get feedback, all kinds of things. And then every now and then promote however you're allowed to in those environments and try to grow from there.
I love all of that advice. So thank you. And those are some really good ideas. I'm going to have to go back and take notes. But one other question that I promised I would ask, because my audience is very ambitious and a lot of them have, 10 different ideas. If we have a bunch of different ideas that we want to run with, how do you recommend we kind of narrow down and choose the first or choose the best idea to kind of move forward with? Do you have any
You mean like
advice
10
around
different
that?
10 story ideas?
Yeah. So for example, I have an idea about writing a book about losing a pet, but then I also have an idea of a book about, growing up with autism or something like that, that kind of are all over the range of topics. So if we have a bunch of ideas, is there a way to identify what's best to start with or what's best to kind of go with in terms of sellability or something like that?
I would say that learning the process first is paramount. So I would pick the idea that is most or that is closest to completed. Go there and learn as much as you can. And also, though, think about brand versus singular book. So a lot of times my clients come to me and they have an idea for a book. And then when we really think through what they're trying to do, you're going to probably want to write another book because this is going to be a great experience. It's going to be a blast. You're going to meet all these cool people, get all these fulfilling comments. So why don't we think brand? Even if you write only one book, you still have this umbrella or this opportunity, right? So I would think about how can I make this all fit under one brand? So it may be that Michelle is the main character, and then all these characters in this series have different experiences in life, but Michelle's in every book, right? So all the things don't have to happen to Michelle. Something can happen to her neighbor, something can happen at school, and she's just in that classroom, right? And she's observing. So I would think about brand, and then I don't know if I have one here with me. So I have idea books, like those hardbound journals. I actually print them for myself. Like I publish them, and so they're customized to what I like. But every book idea has its own book. So that way I can focus on one. And if I have an idea, like shiny objects, because what happens is when you are in the creative mood or mode, you get more and more ideas. And that's usually what trips people up. It's like, oh my gosh, all these ideas are coming. I need to start them all. Well, you can start them all, just put them all somewhere, but focus on finishing one. So start all, throw your notes down, put them in the books, but finish one. But be thinking bigger when you work on that first one. Like with Charlie's, he's like, I want to write, what was the first one? Charlie's Blue Boots, because he had blue casts on his legs when he had that surgery. And he's like, Charlie's Blue Boots. And I said, no, let's make this a publishing, or let's make you a logo with a company name. So he's Little People Adventures. So now the floodgates are open. He can write a million different things. He can even go all the way up to when he's 16 and gets his license, because he has to have certain accommodations, and it's a different process for him, So think brand, not book, and think big, but focus on one. Just pick the one that's closest to finished and go through the process and learn, and take lots of notes and write down everything you do. I love Excel spreadsheets for that.
That's really smart. And it's, again, something that I teach in my programs is when you're going through the opening process of your business, it seems like you're going to remember every little thing, and then it evaporates quicker than you.
Yes, write it down. Yes.
Yes.
Step. That's your system. You can put your own system in place, even if you're doing it all by yourself.
Absolutely. So just to kind of wrap this conversation up, for anybody listening who is really excited and feeling really motivated to get started, do you have any kind of last advice that you want to leave people who are considering writing a book for the first time, whether it's a children's book or any kind of book?
Well, first of all, anything that you do that's creative is actually a form of self-care. And writing, the act of writing, especially with one of these, has therapeutic effects. It's calming, it's anti-anxiety, it's a creative outlet, it's a way to put things down and let them go, but it's also a way to minister to or serve or help others in profound ways. And you never know how big that impact is. There's no way to know. Okay. So think of a book that changed your life or changed the way you thought about something or helped you in some big way. And aren't you glad that that person took the time and actually did the writing? Because all authors deal with imposter syndrome, and most authors are not trained writers. I've helped almost 400 people write books, and I think 2 of them were actually trained in the profession of writing, and they were journalists. That's it. Everybody else, they're like doctors, teachers, a firefighter. I mean, it's all of the trauma recovery specialists. I mean, grandparents, engineers. One guy's like writes tech, does tech stuff. I don't even know. I mean, they're all over the board, right? So what I think is important is to see this as a way to do something that's meaningful for you first, and stay motivated that way. Like, I'm writing this because it's fun, it's creative, it's awesome. I'm writing it because it's going to help people. Forget about money, because that is a depressing motivator. Do it for much bigger reasons, okay? Because you can have an eternal impact on somebody's life with words. Books live forever. Think of all the books we read, and all the people who wrote them have been gone a long, long time. So, and then also actually do it. Even if you just spend 15 minutes a day, and do it on, it's fine to do it on paper, like whatever method you use. Don't sit down at a screen and think, I've got to write a bestseller that's going to change the. Just do it. Just do it. And just don't self-edit. Just get it all out and then go back, because self-editing brings that imposter syndrome in, and she's hateful and mean and will make you feel bad. Like, who do you think you are? I think there are thousands and thousands and thousands of great ideas, and there's plenty of room for all of them. And the difference between people who publish books and who don't are the ones who actually sit down and do the writing. And it does not have to be, you don't have to do it alone either, because there are people like me who want to help you. So I would say just remember why you're doing it. Do it for yourself first. Think about your target reader and how you can really impact that person's life and the ripple effect. And then just make a commitment and make it like Monday through Thursday, 20 minutes a day. Limit that, like micro doses. So you're not saying, all right, all day Friday, I'm going to be a writer. Make it fun and back off if it gets to be too much. But a lot of times what happens is you'll say, okay, 15 minutes a day, that's what I'm going to do. And then you end up 30. You look up and it's been 30 and you're having a blast. So just keep it up and don't stop. And ask for help.
That's great advice. So kind of along that same vein, if we want help, how can we learn more about you and your business and how can we connect with you?
Awesome. People can actually email me directly. And my email is Jody, Jody, at crippledbeaglepublishing.com. Or they can go to my website, crippledbeaglepublishing.com. And on my website, or you can email me and ask for the link, they can set up a next steps call, because the question I get is, I've got an idea, but I don't know what to do next. Or I've got this crazy stuff written down and I don't know what to do next. I'm like, I do. So they can schedule a call with me and I'll help them figure it out.
All right. Well, thank you. And I will link to all of that just to make it extra easy for people to connect. But thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation and so practical. So thank you again for your time.
Awesome. Wonderful. There are a lot of great ideas, and anybody who's an entrepreneur who's got the guts and the energy to open an indoor playground absolutely has what it takes to write a book. And I think of the example also that sets for all your clients. I think it'd be a wonderful example to set for them.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was awesome.
You're welcome. Thanks, Michelle.
All right, that wraps up my conversation. As I said, I've linked all of Jody's information in the video description, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. All right, have an amazing week. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.